someone says practice using their hand, which is great. Cool. Okay, guys. Well, I will just crack on. So we've got this. It's 2 o'clock, so that's fine. This is one of our webinars for looking at careers in law. Quite a few of you have LinkedIn me. You've emailed into the student inbox, and you've asked on these webinars for a bit more understanding about law opportunities and how to navigate a law career. I'm not an expert in law. We have worked with the likes of Allen and Overy, Denton's in the past. We've done some bits with Erwin Mitchell, which is relevant for today's session with Sue. But I wanted to bring Sue in because she's got great experience in law, and you'll be able to ask her some really cool questions, hopefully. Just a bit of admin. The top part of the screen that you can see. Sue, just making sure you can see the screen okay, the presentation?
Yeah.
Brilliant. If you haven't signed up to our program yet, because you're one of the new students who we've incorporated recently, make sure you do that survey at the top. I've also put it into the chat box as well, which you can click on the link, and then that means we'll be able to email you with updates about new webinars that are happening. So the agenda for today, let me just get rid of this box. How you can communicate in the session, which I'll go over. We'll introduce Sue, and then it's Q&A, guys. There's no boring presentation today. So we'll just be able to ask different questions and see where we go. And then what I want to do at the end of it with my teacher hat on is just try and summarize what we've learned and what you've got from the webinar as well. So do be open with that, guys, if you can. We'll be finished at 3 o'clock, absolute latest. So how can you communicate? Using Zoom, hopefully on your laptops. If you're on your mobile phone, you can listen in, of course, and you won't be able to engage quite so well, but you can listen in. And what we promise is that we will record this and send it out to everybody on the webinar. But if you are using Zoom on your laptop, you can open up the chat box to type in anything that you want to type in that's not a specific question. If you want to ask a specific question, please use the Q&A box, and I'll try and make sure that we get through that and we answer all your questions. But more fun and a bit more interesting is if you raise your hand, which we'll do as soon as we start asking Sue some questions. I'll make you jump the queue so that you can ask your question, because we'd rather hear from you. It makes it a bit more interesting, so it's not just my boring voice. So that's how you can communicate. So you guys know who I am, of course. I'm the CEO and founder of Pathway CTM. Oh, good, we've reached 50 attendees, which is fantastic. Well done, guys. I want to hand over to Sue just with a bit of a macro introduction, Sue, and then we're going to flick onto your LinkedIn career in a second. So over to Sue, just with a little bit of an introduction, please, from you.
Okay, so my name's Sue Lenkowski. Shocking stat is I graduated in 1983, which is probably before many of your parents were born. I graduated in 1983 with a business studies degree. Was unemployed for 6 months after graduation, ended up working for a local authority, spent 15 years in local government in the various HR and training roles, and then jumped into law when I joined Erwin Mitchell in 1997. That enough?
Yeah, that's good. And so just to bring it back actually there, so you went to university to do business studies. For those students who are in year 12, 13 at the moment, thinking about where they go next, how has university changed from when you went and decided to go to now, would you say?
One thing is that I got a grant to go to university. What I think is different about my experiences, I actually did what was called a sandwich degree. And at the time when I was going to uni, most degrees were straight academic degrees. But I did a 4-year degree and spent a year out in industry. And I think what has changed with unis and a lot of degrees now, they are much more practical than they were in my day. But I actively chose a practical degree because I thought it would help me when I ultimately graduated. So it's changed because there's the money side of it. I hate to say it, but I think we did many more hours lectures than most full-time students do these days. We were more spoon-fed than I think university students are these days. There's a lot more put on students to self-direct and self-learn than we did. So I probably used to do 18 to 20 hours lectures a week. My sense is a lot of universities, you might get 9 hours a week now.
Wow, yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned there a sandwich year, so you did a year in industry.
Mhm.
I always think I went to university myself, and I didn't do one, but I always think it's so well worth doing, isn't it? I think the Institute of Student Employers, where I think we might have met. Oh, sorry about the background noise. It's I think 70% on par. 70% of graduates end up coming through sort of internship schemes and summer schemes and placement years at university. If you were to do university again now, would you do the same thing again? Have that year out?
Absolutely. I think the biggest problem about having a year out is going back.
Because you're in the work mode and you feel like you don't need to go.
Yeah, I was just like, I love this. It's great. I'm doing stuff. And I think all of us on my degree struggled for about the first 2 months when we came back of our final year, because all of us were just like, I just want to go back to work.
Absolutely. And just while we're still summarising and not going into law yet, so local government, HR and training, you say were your specialities. Is that you? If you were to describe HR and training, your two main things?
Yeah, HR training, talent management and recruitment.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And we've got a question already, actually. Do you think a law degree at the LSE or a solicitor apprenticeship would be better? Straight
Wow.
up, Sue. Easy question
That's
to ask.
the $1 million question. Right. I think there's pros and cons of each. Doing a law degree is an opportunity to study law and get a degree, and then maybe decide you don't want to do law, but you've got a great degree for a passport to another career. If you jump onto a solicitor apprenticeship, it's a 6-year program, you will get a law degree within it. But what if you get to year 3 and think, I don't want to be a lawyer? So I think there are pros and cons of both. I think the major benefit of doing a solicitor apprenticeship is you are learning whilst you are earning and doing it on the job. So you're not studying law in a bubble. You will be doing your contract module as part of your solicitor apprenticeship, and you will be working, doing legal work around contracts, which is very different from being on a law degree where you just study the law of contracts. So I think there's no right or wrong with it. There are pros and cons from both.
And I really want to get into that debate today with people maybe speaking out loud, because should I go to university or should I do the apprenticeship route? I think it's a really interesting one for law. But before we get into that, let's have a little look at Sue's journey in life. I just want to notice Owen Mitchell. So that's quite a big law firm. Is it part of the Magic Circle? And talk us through what happens at Owen Mitchell.
When I joined in 1997, there were 900 people.
Yeah.
By the time I left in 2008, there were close to 2,000 people. It grew rapidly in the 11 years that I was there. But the thing about Owen Mitchell is it's very different from a Magic Circle firm,
right,
because it doesn't just do corporate law. So it does personal injury law, it does family law, it does criminal law and corporate law. So it's every type of law was done by Owen Mitchell, which is obviously very different from your Magic Circle, which is pure corporate. But it grew massively in the time I was there. We did 5 mergers and took other firms under our wings and everything else. But it was a very, and is still a very unique firm, because it does so many different areas of law. These days, most firms specialise in 1 or 2 particular areas of law.
That's really interesting. Okay, so different types of law. So Owen Mitchell was corporate law. What about the next stage of your CV here, Sue? Anything to point out?
So 2008, I decided to make the massive leap to leave the world of work and set up my own business. A lot of people thought I was crazy. It was the height of the last economic crash, but it was the right thing to do. I'd been working solidly since the age of 22 for organisations, and I decided I'd give it a go. I had no idea whether I could succeed. It was the scariest thing I ever did. Doing it at the time of the crash wasn't great, because my husband then lost his job 9 months after I went self-employed. But I've been going 11 years, And you can never say never, but I would never want to go back working for an organisation. I love the freedom, I love the variety. And I think the greatest buzz you get when you have your own business is when you look each month at how much you've invoiced, you know, that people bought you. It's not because somebody decided to pay you a wage, and it didn't really matter whether you did an amazing job or not. Every single penny that I earn is because somebody called or emailed and said, we want to buy you to do a particular thing. And that's an amazing feeling, and it never goes away.
Amazing. And that's what I've just brought up there. So you're now a director of your own business that you've been doing for just over 11 years. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. We've got a question from Ella. She's put up her hand, which we like. Ella, I'm going to allow you to talk. Does that work? Ella?
Hello?
Yeah. Hi, Ella. We can hear you.
Hi. I was wondering, how hard was it to set up your own business? And for law, do you think it's a good idea?
Okay. The hardest thing about running your own business is getting business, because, you know, you just sit there going, okay, so does anybody want to buy me? How am I going to market myself? And that is very challenging. I was very, very, very lucky, if you want to put it that way, that I emailed 20 people the day that I set up my business saying, remember me? I've worked with you in various places. Fancy a coffee and a chat. And out of those 20 people, 11 people said, yes, let's have a chat. And I immediately got 3 pieces of work. And from that moment, my confidence grew. And if I tell you guys, 90% of the work I've done in 11 years has come from people who have worked with me sometime in my career. I think that's amazing. And it's, you know, because I wouldn't be a great cold salesperson if I had to pick the phone and go, hi, I'm Sue, buy me. It's not my bag. But the fact I've got a real network of people I've worked with, LinkedIn, I've got so many people I've worked with who all of a sudden will just pop up and say, got this problem, can you come in and help us? So it's challenging, and the scariest thing is wondering where your next piece of work is coming from. So at the moment, I'm working for 3 law firms, but at any one point in time, that work could disappear. And if all 3 disappear at the same time, I'm now sitting here with no income, no holiday pay, no sick pay, thinking, what am I going to do? But it is the most amazing experience.
That's brilliant. Good question, Ella. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Good stuff. Come back on later. Oh, go on. Oh, no, that's fine. I'm going to come to the next person, which is, bear with me, Fatima. You had a question. Let me just dig you out here. Fatima, I'm just going to allow you to talk now. Does that work?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
All right. So I have a question. I don't know if it's irrelevant, but how did you manage like social life, family life with doing your business and law? Like, how did you manage all of that?
To be honest, when I worked full time at Irwin Mitchell, I had much less of a life than I have now. And that was one of the biggest drivers I had for leaving that job and going self-employed, because it did mean I could choose the hours that I work. So I rarely work on a Friday these days. If I have to, I will. But one of the things I think about a legal career is it's a lot better than when I was first joined the law, but it's still quite a tough environment to work in. And certainly if you choose to do corporate law, the hours can be really, really long, because if you're working on a deal, maybe one company is buying another company or something like that, you'll work through the night to get that deal done and everything else. So it is quite challenging. I think the legal profession is catching up with the rest of the world. So it's much more family friendly now. It's much more open to agile working, and it'll get even more open to agile working, seeing as we've all now had to work from home because of coronavirus. And so it is changing, but the fact of the matter is, it is quite a challenging profession to work in. And I don't think anybody should ever try and duck that particular question. But now my working hours are probably 70% of what they used to be when I actually worked in a law firm.
Brilliant. Thanks, Fatima. Thank you. Sue, I just wanted to get onto the nuts and crux of it. So you said that there's lots of different types of law, and I'm sure young people thinking that they're interested in law potentially might want to know these. So there's corporate law. Could you just go through maybe each of them and a little bit about it and what we should know about them if possible?
Okay, so you've got corporate law. So corporate law, you make your clients are businesses. They're not individuals. And within corporate law, you could be advising a business on how to float on the stock exchange, how to acquire another company, some of the tax issues around a company, things like that. But basically, and most people who are corporate lawyers say they are as much business people as lawyers, because their job is to help a business understand the business and then help the owners of the business or the shareholders manage and run the business effectively. So that's corporate law. You probably then, the next thing you talk about is litigation. So litigation covers a wide range of areas, but basically it's where you've got somebody claiming and somebody defending. That could be commercial litigation, where somebody's suing a company for the fact their product didn't work correctly. It could be an individual suing Tesco because they fell down in their supermarket and broke their shoulder. It could be any form of commercial dispute. So that's litigation. Then you've got family law, which is obviously divorce, child abuse, that sort of stuff broadly. Then you've got criminal law, which could be representing criminals or defending criminals. Wills and trusts is another area of law. There's many, many, many areas of law, and they are all very different, and they all suit different sorts of people. In really broad terms, we talk about two types of law. Law can be either contentious or non-contentious. Contentious law is anything that could lead to being in court. Non-contentious law is stuff that doesn't. And you tend to find that people, they're two very different sorts of people who get attracted to those two different types. So people who are attracted to contentious law are really keen on the arguing side of it and the logic and that sort of thing. Non-contentious lawyers tend to like to apply the law and methodically work through a problem within legal principles. So that might be a commercial property lawyer, or it might be a mergers and acquisitions lawyer, but very different individuals. And if one thing I'd say to everybody on the call is, if you can meet as many different lawyers as you can, and whether Chris can facilitate this through some of the webinars, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I think if you can meet and listen to different sorts of lawyers, you'll start to see how they are all really different personalities. And it's about finding the area of law that suits you and your personality and what you want to achieve in your career. They really, you can get 10 lawyers in the room and you wouldn't know they were all in the same profession. They're all just so completely different people.
That's so interesting. It's the most popular one. Actually, where are most of the jobs, I wonder, for graduates and apprentices?
That's interesting, and it changes every time the government changes the regulations that makes one sort of work less profitable than the other. There's a lot of working commercial firms in London. All the big commercial firms are based in the city. It makes sense. There's a lot of, or has been a lot of, apprenticeships available in either insurance law firms, who tend to be defendant firms. So what their job is to defend the insurers against claims, or in the claimant side of the world, which might be personal injury. But personal injury has seen a massive reduction in the last 4 years because the government is intent on reducing the amount of claims that people can make going through a lawyer, because they perceive personal injury lawyers as becoming very rich out of the misfortune of others. So it's things like witness claims, which they're tightening up on. And there's just a piece of legislation that has just been, or there's a new system that's just been postponed because of coronavirus, which was due to come in at late April, which would mean that no solicitor would be engaged for a claim that was worth less than £5,000. And that is a hell of a lot of the personal injury market.
Right, okay, that's interesting.
Now that's been postponed till May at the moment because of the current crisis, but who knows? And then things like family law, criminal law, the problem in those areas has been that that governments have consistently reduced legal aid funding. So previously, many people could get their solicitor's fees paid by something called legal aid. It's almost non-existent for family work now. It's very limited for criminal work. And so you've seen those sectors reduce as well.
Okay, interesting. I've got a few questions to note here. Is there a barrister equivalent of a solicitor apprenticeship?
At the moment, no. There was talk about trying to develop one. It would be much more complicated than a solicitor apprenticeship, because unlike the vast majority of solicitors, barristers are all self-employed. Apprenticeships have to be paid employment. And therefore, how are you going to get a group of basically self-employed individuals, which is what a barrister's chambers is, to agree to pay the salary of an apprentice? So I think there are lots of challenges on the sort of barrister front. And I don't think that's going to come on stream for maybe 2-3 years.
Interesting. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that barristers were self-employed. There we go. Learning things all the time.
They're all suffering with COVID-19.
Wow, goodness me.
So yeah, all barristers are self-employed. There's probably a handful that are employed status.
Of course, it makes sense. Yeah.
They sit together in the chambers, but they're not an organisation. They're not like a company.
No,
they band
of course.
together and they say we're friends and we'll be friends and we'll support each other. But ultimately, barrister A is responsible for him or herself and barrister B is responsible for him or herself. They just pay into a little pot for communal services, things like the barrister's clerk, the premises, and things like that. So,
okay, interesting. And Fatima, I'll come to your question next. You've just raised your hand again. I'm just going to ask, actually, Sue, in terms of accountants, PwC, whatever it might be, EY, KPMG, you can study music at university and go and be an accountant. I wonder if that's the same in law. We've got a question here saying, if I do a law with psychology degree, will that put me at a disadvantage in terms of becoming a lawyer compared to someone who has done just a law degree?
Not at all. So there are two routes into the law, a non-law degree and a law degree. And the sort of percentage of lawyers or qualified solicitors is about 50-50 across who did a law degree and who did a non-law degree. It's interesting, if you get a group of lawyers in a room and you say, what's better, a law degree or a non-law degree? The ones who did a non-law degree will say non-law degree, and the ones that did a law degree will say law degree.
Fine.
So the only thing with a non-law degree is you then have to, in the current rules, which are changing, do a 1-year post-grad course to convert your non-law degree into then the next route. So it takes slightly longer if you do a non-law degree. But a law and psychology degree, provided it had the appropriate legal modules in it, would be fine, and you'd be treated exactly the same as a law degree, a single honours law degree.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sue. It's so detailed. Thank you. Dev, can you speak to us now? Dev, did you have a question? Dev, bear with me. You're not speaking to us. That's fine. Let's go back to. Bear with me. This is my admin now. My admin time. Fatima, I think you had another question.
On the call, linking in with me because I'm accepting their requests as we go.
Yeah, there we go. Proactive. Fatima, do you want to ask another question?
Can you hear me right now?
Yes, we can.
All right, cool. So I was wondering if you could be a barrister and solicitor, because I've heard that you can be a solicitor and become a barrister by gaining higher rights. Like, can you be both, like be a solicitor and barrister?
Right, you can become a solicitor, and as you say quite rightly, then take your higher rights of audience, which in essence means you can go to court in the same way that a barrister would. So yes, you can then practice in all the different courts by having your higher rights. You wouldn't call yourself a barrister, you'd call yourself a solicitor, but you'd be recognised as having the right to practice in the courts, just like a barrister. And that, to be honest, is what a lot of people have done. Rather than go directly down the barrister route, they've got the higher rights of audience, and quite a lot of law firms where a solicitor is working and being paid as an employee use their services to actually then go to court, but they don't have to have that risk of self-employment. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
Good question.
No
And I just because this is Bruce who's put it in both areas, so he's obviously keen to ask it. Keep the questions in the Q&A box if you can. He says, I am pursuing a computer science degree for next year, but I find law quite interesting as well. Anyway, there are a way to integrate both law and computer science in career paths. Well, that's a tricky one, Sue.
No, it isn't actually.
Okay.
Okay, so there are literally in the last year, there has been an explosion of firms wanting to build graduate legal careers around legal technology. So some of the big London firms whose names are escaping me have been taking their qualified solicitors and upskilling them to then focus on legal technology. Also, technology skills are phenomenally valued in today's legal world. Legal process is everything at the moment. So if you go off and do your computer science degree, by the time you've graduated, there may be specific roles that allow you to combine the two, or you could probably do, which would be at the time you graduate, something called the SQE1, which is the Solicitor's Qualification Exam 1, which would give you enough legal knowledge for firms to find you very attractive to join their business. But technology is everything in law firms now.
Great question. Thanks, Sue. So the SQE, is that a solicitor qualification?
Right. This is where you probably all glaze over and get really bored. So
because, and just so you know, one of the question was from Dev, what are your opinions on the new proposed SQE that is due to come in next year?
Yeah. So from next year, so the traditional route into law was law degree or non-law degree. Non-law degree would then do something called a GDL, which was a graduate diploma in law, followed by something called the LPC, the legal practice course, and then do a 2-year training contract. Law degree, you just did the legal practice course, followed by the 2-year training contract. From next year, you will do a law degree or a non-law degree. You will then have to sit and pass the SQE1. Many law schools will be designing their law degrees to combine the SQE1 into it. But if you do a non-law degree, you'll probably need to do a course to then pass this thing called the SQE1, which is in essence the subjects you do on a law degree, but testing them in slightly different ways. And then from then, you'll do your period of work-based training, which is a training contract, but we're now calling it a period of work-based training. And then towards the end of that, you will sit something called the SQE2, which is the equivalent of the old LPC that I mentioned in the traditional way. What are my views of the SQE? First thing is, I really want the SQE to come in, and there's a really good reason for it is, the SQE 1 and 2 sit in the solicitor apprenticeship standards that were signed off in 2016. And anybody who started a solicitor apprenticeship in 2016 is coming up to the point where they will need to sit SQE2, 1 and SQE2. For me, if we don't have those same 2 exams, for people who go down the university route, we are creating a 2-tier profession. And I think it would be crazy to have people who've qualified one way and people who've qualified the other way. So I think the SQE is a good thing in general, but it is an incredible thing for the profession to agree on, which is why it's taking so long. And at the moment, its status is it's going back to the Legal Services Board in July. Whether it will be approved or not is a question mark.
Okay, so very, very technical there. Bruce, you did, but Sue, so far you're nailing everything. Let's see if we've got a question that Sue can't answer, I wonder. Bruce, you did ask, so you raised your hand, but now you've gone. Ella, you've just raised your hand, so I'm going to come to you because you jumped the queue if you raise your hand, because it's nice to hear from you. Ella?
Hi. I was wondering what kind of super curricular activities would be good for a career in law.
Do you mean while you're at college, while you're at university?
Like the whole time, so kind of from sixth form through to when you've, I mean, the whole time you're in law, really, like anything you can do to make yourself stand out.
Okay, so all I can say is it's about demonstrating you want to do things outside of study. And I know that sounds a crazy sort of answer, but what I mean is, if you are working 3 jobs to pay yourself through university, massive tick in the box of resilience, of work ethic, of things like that. Volunteering, anything that you are personally passionate about, to be able to demonstrate that you're actively involved in volunteering is fantastic. If you can, and it's probably more when you get to uni, but if you can get involved in legal clinics at university, and there's loads of legal clinics, citizens advice bureaus, always love to see people's CVs that say that they have done some work at CABs, because it's a massively rewarding thing to do. And without it, there's a lot of people who would have no access to legal advice. So anything like that. It used to be, it was all about getting involved in team sports and everything else. Fortunately, as a profession, we've moved on from thinking that unless you were captain of the rugby team, the hockey team, or any other sporting team, you know, good. So don't worry if you're not sporty, because I think sometimes people worry about that. Or simply being able to demonstrate that you've had caring responsibilities and what you've done with that. You know, I think it's just about showing you've done more than just study. Because one thing I say to everybody who's thinking of law is, clients buy legal services from people they like. So what law firms are looking for is people who've got a personality, who people have done things other than just studied. You know, you can get 3 A stars and a first, but if you haven't done things that help you relate to individuals and be able to give advice in a clear manner, you probably won't be a great lawyer. So it's anything like that. If you can expose yourself, that's probably a really crazy way of putting it, but if you can meet as many different lawyers as possible, I've said it once before, I'll say it again, that is really helpful, because it demonstrates that you are keen and you're going the extra mile. So I think that's a good thing as well. But basically, making sure you've got a breadth of activities and interests outside your studies is the most important thing.
Does that help? I think that's a great answer. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ella. It's interesting, Sue. Only a quarter of 16 to 17-year-olds do any conventional paid work. I was reading about this earlier. But you're saying definitely don't just get your grades. But then on that front, I want to challenge you, because if I wanted to get into the magic circle, Allen and Overy, whatever it might be, on one of their graduate schemes, isn't it all about the grades? Like I think at A&O, you've got to have A.A.B. at A levels before then you go to university. You've got to get your 2-1. So it is also really important to get your grades as well for law, isn't it?
It is, and it's a fair challenge. I think your magic circle are the ones who are really always hitting the top benchmark with those stellar grades. But then they they've got a mass of people with those stellar grades. So then it's all the other things that I've talked about.
Yeah.
So it is important. And I know firms started to look back at GCSEs as well.
Wow.
To see a consistent sort of set of grades. So every exam you take is important. But I will say, although there's probably 20-25% of the top law firms going for those absolute stellar grades, there are 80% who will look at B, C grades and things like that. A 2-1 is generally up there. What I will say is, and I love this about Irwin Mitchell, we didn't have a single academic benchmark when I worked there for trainee solicitors. And I took on a trainee who had got a 3rd class honour degree. Why had he got a 3rd class honours? He was a more mature candidate. He'd done his degree through the Open University, and during the time he was doing his degree, his wife had twins.
Life experience.
And he's now a partner in the law firm.
Wow.
But, you know, generally, but the grades are so, everybody has got pretty decent grades. So then it's about what else can you bring to the party to differentiate. So,
and that's what Hannah's asking here, you know, how can you stand out? I think you've already answered that though, Sue, haven't you? Really do as much as you can to meet lawyers, get out there and build a personality around your grades, because grades is just one side of the story, isn't it? Yeah,
it is, but they are important.
Okay. And I guess I think this might be my last question, because we've got 19 questions on the Q&A. So Sue, we might be here till 3 o'clock. I think we will.
And now I keep scrolling through them.
I just wanted to ask, do I have a better, because companies now are doing apprenticeships, right? Do I have more of a chance of getting into a law firm as an apprentice rather than everyone else who goes to uni? Because I've looked at the ISC research, I look at the research of the companies I work with at Pathway. Quite often you've got a better chance of getting into a big firm as an apprentice because people don't do it. Is that right?
Right. So with solicitor apprenticeships, there aren't that many. Because there are 2 apprenticeships in law, paralegal and solicitor.
Right.
The paralegal apprenticeship is 2 years. The solicitor apprenticeship is 6. The vast majority of law firms have embraced the paralegal apprenticeship. So I think last year there might have been 600 or 700 paralegal apprenticeships available. And the reason is that a lot of law firms are very risk averse. And they're thinking, so I'm going to take this person at maybe 18, 19, and I'm going to commit for 6 years and they're going to commit for 6 years when they actually don't really know whether this is the career for them. So that's why a lot of law firms are taking people on the paralegal. It's a 2-year program. And at the end of that, then they are progressing those that have really shown potential onto the solicitor apprenticeship. But it is fair to say that the number of applications for solicitor apprenticeships, if you compare that to the applications for a trainee solicitor position in a law firm, completely different. So in a large law firm with trainees and solicitor apprenticeships, you might get 250, 300 applications for solicitor apprenticeships. You might get 3,000-4,000 applications for traineeships.
For the apprenticeship?
For the trainee solicitor. So 4,000 for trainee solicitor and only about 300-400 for solicitor apprentice.
Oh, okay. But are there more graduate roles available?
Oh, yeah. There's hardly any solicitor apprenticeships.
Right.
And one thing I'd like to stress to everybody who's on this webinar is, I know the word solicitor is the thing you want to be. And so I speak to a lot of young people who say, I'm not doing the paralegal apprenticeship, it's 2 years, I want to be a solicitor. If you are keen on earning and learning, which is what an apprenticeship is about, and you want to see if actually law is for you, you could do worse than do the paralegal apprenticeship. Because you could do the paralegal apprenticeship and then go off and do your law degree if you wanted your uni experience, and you'd know that's what you want to do. So don't necessarily ignore paralegal apprenticeships, because they are a stepping stone that you can then move on to.
Interesting. Okay. So what if I was looking at that? Technically, I might have more chance of getting onto the solicitor apprenticeship because there's only 300 applying. However, there's going to be far less. But then, yeah. So I might give that a go, but really hedge my bets and expect to go to university where there's more jobs.
Or get a paralegal apprenticeship, because there's a lot of those, and then go straight onto a solicitor apprenticeship. It's one more year.
Fine.
More than the solicitor. And that is becoming the norm in the industry.
Okay, brilliant. Right, let's try and get through these questions. Remember, if you put your hand up, you skip the queue. I'm just going to start with, is a law conversion better? For example, could you go and study sport and do a law conversion? What's your view, Sue?
I think it's what you fancy.
Yeah.
I think if your first degree is non-law and you choose a subject that you love, you'll probably get great grades in it. And if you get those great grades in your first degree, then you do your GGL, and that's helping you get through the process. For me, it is all about doing something you think you're going to enjoy. And if you do something you enjoy, you'll excel in it and get the good grades. But there is no real sort of looking down at people who did a sports degree followed by a non-law law conversion. It's not like.
And we'll come on to Hannah's question in a second. But Sue, don't you find that young people often say this because our teachers are telling us you're not going to do this unless you do that? It just seems like that's not the real life.
No, it's not at all. But I think quite often, and particularly with a lot of the professions, the way that recruitment has worked and the way it's been done has been the same way for years and years and years. And suddenly law is opening up with all these different pathways and all these different things you can do. And there's a bit of a time lag in the careers advice as well.
Yeah, okay.
Which is one of my massive sort of things that I bang on about is I would love there to be much more careers advice across all the professions, but particularly law.
No, yeah, absolutely. Hannah, you're live. Can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
So you were talking about kind of if you decide that you don't necessarily want a legal-based career like a solicitor or a barrister, what kind of options are available for people who kind of are into the law but don't want a kind of direct role like that?
You could, most big corporations will take law graduates onto their graduate schemes for their fast tracks in management. Any job in a commercial organisation, a law degree is considered a very, very, very good degree to have. So to be honest, you look at the destination stats of people with a law degree, there's probably about 140 different job roles that they have gone into with that particular degree. A lot of the accountancy businesses take on law graduates for specific roles in law. But, or you could simply join an in-house legal team and do legal work with a team which is advising a business around their legal sort of liabilities. But there is definitely, the world is your oyster. A law degree is considered a very, very strong degree for future graduate opportunities.
Thanks, Hannah. Karishma, you're next.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Cool. So I just had two quick questions. One's linked to something you already covered. You mentioned that law firms really like it if you have like a job or like a part-time job at the same time as uni. What happens if your uni advises against having a job?
Okay. And if your uni says don't have a job, don't have a job. But what I would say is if you're not working on your degree, make sure you get involved in clubs and societies where you can demonstrate some qualities like you were working, or do some volunteering work. So, we see a lot of applications from people who joined a particular society and were the chair of it or the treasurer, or they took on responsibility for organising the graduate ball for their year and things like that. So it isn't about paid work necessarily. It's about doing anything that can demonstrate transferable skills and you can build skills with. Does that help?
Yeah, it really does. Okay, cool. And then
curious,
if we have,
they tell you not to do a part-time job?
I'm not that sure. I just know that because I'm not there yet, but I'm hoping to go in October, and they've kind of just said that in general they don't really like students having jobs during term time. It just intervenes with study.
Concentrate on your degree.
Yeah.
And I can understand that. And obviously, if you can financially survive that, that's fine. But then just make sure you get involved in lots of extracurricular university activity to counterbalance that.
Okay, brilliant. And then just very quickly, my second question was if the first, so I'm okay with the actual written application, but it's the Watson Glaser test that some firms require that I really struggle with. Have you got any advice for how to tackle that?
Okay, I sent Chris last night a link to where you can practice it.
Karishma was the one who asked. Well done, Karishma.
Yeah.
The thing about it is Watson Glaser tests 5 different styles of critical thinking.
Sorry, so who uses these tests? Does everyone use them?
A lot of law firms use them, a lot of law firms. So it tests 5 different styles. There's evaluation, deduction, inference, forgot the other 2, but whatever. I suspect you probably, well, I'll ask the direct question to you first of all. Is there one particular section of the test that you really struggle with?
It's more like the other way around. There's like 1 or 2 that I'm good at, and then there's the other 3 it's like hit and miss, and that's what I don't like, because sometimes I've got it and then I'm like, okay, cool, and other times I'll just do another practice test and it will be not great.
Okay, I mean, my only tips, because the thing is, the test is testing certain ways of thinking. It's in the sort of definition of the test, and it may be that the couple of areas that you struggle with are areas that currently that thinking style requires development in you. So it's about going back and thinking, well, if deduction is an area that I'm really struggling with on that test, I need to find some things online that I can do to build up my deductive reasoning powers. And you can Google search, and there are things where you can do puzzles and things that will help you develop those. I think my only top tips with Watson Glaser is it's a 5-part test. So basically chunk up the time you spend on each element of it. So, 10 minutes is up, right, no matter where I've got to on that part of the test, I'm moving on to the next one. 10 minutes is up, on to the next one, on to the next one, and make sure you don't spend too much time on any one element of it. But beyond that, it's about finding the sections, critical thinking styles you're struggling with, and looking to try and develop those rather than just keep practicing the test. Does that help?
Yeah, no, that does. Thank you. I'll look into that this week.
Well done, Karishma. Well done for asking. So is that okay?
Yeah, thanks.
Great. Fatima, I think we've got, can we hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Well done.
All right, cool. So I'm sorry I'm asking a lot of questions. I'm quite passionate about law.
Good.
All right.
So I have 2 questions. So I am quite passionate about wanting to study law at Cambridge. Hopefully I want to apply this September. What advice would you give for me to do right now? Like any advice in terms of A-levels or super curricular activities?
Okay, so I'm going to confess, it's a long, long time since I've looked at the entrance process and criteria for Cambridge. So Chris, this might be the question that stumped me, so you'll be pleased to know that.
Good. Jolly good.
I think it's demonstrating your passion for law. So the fact you've got involved in this program and you're asking 100 questions, I've been making a big thing about the fact that you've done that. I would certainly try and get work experience or shadowing with solicitors or barristers even, because equally valid for going over to Cambridge for a law degree. But beyond that, you've exhausted my specific knowledge of the Cambridge admissions process.
Fatima, it's all about yourself thinking about that. I think if you're going to go to Cambridge and smash your degree, it's all about thinking, what can I be doing? I'm sure you can come up with some good ideas.
Right, I have one more question.
Go for it.
Yeah.
What you see nowadays, we have to do the ELNA exam, which is the Law National Aptitude Test.
Yeah.
How do you suggest us preparing, like, to prepare for that?
And again, that's beyond my area of expertise. That's more within the realms. If Chris could get somebody who works in a law university, they would be much better placed than me. And one of the things about me is I will never pretend I know something about something if I don't. And actually, any of you who are thinking of going into law in particular, that is one of the best qualities you can have, which is to say, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Fatima, good questions. Have a look at the chat box, Fatima, because Karishma's giving you some advice there, which I think is good. And Fatima, could you also write down your question in the chat box? Because I'm on the phone with Alan and Overy at 3 o'clock, and it might be that we put that into some of the content we do with them next month. Jess, you just jumped the queue. Over to you.
Hi.
Hi, Jess.
I just had a quick question about, so I'm looking to do a solicitor's degree apprenticeship, hopefully, but I'm going to apply to unis as well to keep my options open.
Cool.
But just about sort of how much work experience and how best to get it. Towards it, I've got.
Just repeat.
Jess, are you in year 12?
Yeah.
Yeah, so year 12, looking to get her foot in the door in terms of work experience. Do you know many work experience schemes available this summer, or is it too late for Jess now? And of course, given the timings around coronavirus, what could Jess be doing, I suppose, to get her foot in the door?
Certainly, the work experience programs, both at graduate and non-graduate, have almost ceased for the moment.
Yeah.
Because most law firms, everybody's working from their homes.
Yeah. I was meant to, sorry, I was meant to have work experience with my local Citizens Advice Bureau, but haven't heard back from them because of obviously coronavirus. And then I had home office with the work experience with the home office lined up, but I'm pretty confident that's going to be cancelled now. So I'm just kind of trying to find that.
It's a real difficulty, and to be honest, until we start to get back out the other side of this, I think you're going to struggle to find much in the way of legal experience, if anything at all, because everything's closed. And I'm sorry, but
maybe I can jump in there, Jess. We work with the Co-op who do the paralegal apprenticeship route. We're also working with Alan and Overy, who don't do apprenticeships but do graduate roles. They're going to be providing content with us for April and May. So tune into those webinars and put them down in your CV, on your LinkedIn profile, that you've met these different people, added them on LinkedIn, add Sue on LinkedIn, build that network and start.
Yeah.
If you were to sit down for coffee with Sue, or let's say someone else who isn't Sue, and say you knew Sue and you chatted to her who's done X, Y, Z, straight away you're more credible and you sound like you've done as much as you could,
Okay, thank you.
Right, okay. Good stuff. We're going to try and get through some of these questions. We won't be able to get them all. Sophia's just raised her hand, so she comes to the front of the line. They're the rules. Sophia, what's your question?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Well done.
I just wanted to ask if, like, in your own personal opinion, do you think that the law profession is too saturated?
Okay, that's a really good question. I think the profession has changed in the time I've been in it and will continue to change. And as technology comes more and more into the profession, solicitors will do different things, because a lot of what traditionally was more process orientated will be automated, and solicitors will be required to work very differently. I think last year we saw an increase for the first time in quite a while in the number of trainee solicitors that were taken on by law firms. But it ebbs and flows. And I suppose, and I don't really want to dwell on coronavirus, but it would be wrong not to. I think it'll take the profession quite a while to get over the economic shock of what has happened. And that's across the board for any roles at the moment, to be honest. I think the good thing is for most people on this call, you'll probably be coming out the other side of what you're doing as we're starting to stabilise again. You know, it's the difference between 2008 and 2011. I don't think it's saturated at the moment, but I don't think what's going on at the moment will help prospects, I think. But you're a long way off wanting to get into the profession.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good question. Well done. Thanks, Sue. We're working you hard today, aren't we?
It's all right. It's all right.
Good stuff. Okay, guys, here we go. Is it preferable to study a law degree instead of a non-law degree? We've covered that one. Do you have any advice for an assessment centre, particularly the case study part?
Okay, so in terms of a case study, number one is it's designed to put you under some form of pressure. So it's designed to test your ability to look at lots of information, sort out what is irrelevant and what isn't irrelevant. So anything you can do to practice that skill of seeing what is really important in lots of information would be very important. And I think it's about then, I mean, there's masses of different case studies, but it's about being to be really concise, either in writing, if you're being asked to write your answer, or communicating orally in terms of your answers. So they would be my two top tips around anything that was a case study.
Brilliant, thank you. Sue, do you find your job fulfilling? And if so, why? Top line.
I love my job. I love everything I do. The reason I love what I do is the biggest buzz I've got out of everything I've ever done is when I see that I made a difference to somebody's life by helping them through their career. So either with career guidance or actually taking them on as a trainee and then 10 years later seeing they're a partner. Or my biggest buzz is that in 2012, I took on 7 young people to do a level 2 apprenticeship in a law firm. 5 of those 7 will qualify as solicitors via the solicitor apprenticeship route in 2022. They never went to university. Quite a few of them have got C and D at A level. And to see that somebody who never thought they'd ever be a solicitor do that, it's amazing. So yeah, I love it. It's great.
That's so good. Sue, and I'm going to finish with this question because I've got to get on a call at 3 o'clock, and I'll mention the Ellen and everything in a second. Is a lawyer's daily life sometimes similar to the TV show Suits?
No. It's nothing like it, and it's not as glamorous. Law is a lot about paperwork and process and painstaking detail, and a little bit of being Harvey Specter and being a bit woo and a bit wee. And if I tell you I didn't watch Suits until last year, and then I decided I ought to because so many young people asked me about it. But no, it's not anything like anything that you see on the television.
No, that's brilliant. Sue, are you okay for us to, I've already shared your LinkedIn profile. Are you okay to share that with them on email as well with the students so they can add you on LinkedIn and maybe get in touch with you that way?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. I mean, quite a few have been coming through and I've been going, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, good on you.
I shouldn't have done it, wasn't it actually on this call, but anyway, not to
No, multitasking, that's good. And I think there's been some fantastic questions today, guys. Sorry we couldn't get to them all. In future webinars, do raise your hand and speak over audio just to make sure you can jump the queue, because we know that people obviously have busy lives, particularly Sue. Tomorrow we've got a workshop on, here it is, on covering letters. So sometimes people use covering letters in application processes. Sue, do they use them in law as well, covering letters?
Yes, a lot of covering letters in law, and there's a set thing that everybody's looking for. So that'll be a great workshop. Workshop.
Good stuff. And I'll put the link there into the chat box so you can just sign up for that one there, and you'll get an email about it, of course, if you're on our program already. But otherwise, you know where we are on Instagram, and you know that you can email into us with any of your questions, and we can pick up the phone and help you with those things. But Sue, I just want to really thank you for your time today.
No problem. And if I can help again, please let me know.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Sue, and thanks everyone else. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, everybody. Lovely to meet
Sue.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, and I just thought that question about Ellen and Overy, sorry, they will be, I'm on the phone with them now. We're talking to them about what content we want to be pushing out. They're going to be working with us from May and June about some different content pieces. So make sure you get on the webinars, basically, put them down in your CV, add people on LinkedIn, and start really trying to create that movement towards that law job opportunity, graduate apprenticeship, whatever it might be. Well done, everybody, and we'll speak to you soon.